You should put the best boss fight at the end. Honestly, I think you might be able to get away with the rest of them being terrible as long as you end off your game with something special. Whatever you do, don't make the final boss really bad. Is that so much to ask?
At this stage, as I talk about negative topics every other week, I fear I might be gaining a reputation for spending my Sundays complaining about really trivial things. I'm actually an old man, the people in makeup do a great job. But no, I reckon it's a valid complaint to have of a game when you spend so much time doing all these heroic things, only to have everything unravel by the end. I don't ask so much, just for final boss fights to be something a little bit better than terrible. I realise that I talk about boss fights a lot, and under usual circumstances there will probably be some overlap with other videos I've made. However, rather than talk about the same bosses as before who might be eligible for a video like this, I kind of want to talk about other fights that I haven't mentioned before. Just didn't have the time. I didn't forget like everyone thinks. Although I'm actually 72, so maybe they've got a point. Damn kids ruining my fun! Anytime you play a game with an unconventional fighting style, boss fights are a complete crapshoot. It's a beautiful case study because, for example, any game that has a heavy focus on stealth has to radically change its approach if it wants to pit the player up against a single opponent. Obviously, you can still use stealth to make a boss fight awesome. The End from Metal Gear Solid 3 is a testament to that. But sometimes stealth games fall apart when you take the sneakiness out of it. Assassin's Creed's combat is fairly basic, but works for the fights you end up in if you aren't stealthy enough to avoid detection. Not necessarily something you want to base a final boss fight around.
I know that in recent years Assassin's Creed has kind of lost its way. They're trying to bring it back with Origins though, I'm not sure how well that will go. But the first couple of games in this series are awesome. Assassin's Creed 2 is my favourite of the lot because it's so polished, I think. The final boss is terrible though, you can't really get away from that.
I almost like it though. I come from the school of Metal Gear where ridiculous setups for boss fights make me all sorts of moist. So when Assassin's Creed 2 puts you in a room with the Pope and tells you to punch that man, I kind of want to do it. I have many questions, but for now I'd like you to take in this spectacle and see if it fits in the story about the shady behaviour of secret societies and stealthy assassins murdering people from the shadows. It puts me in a difficult situation because secretly, I fucking love this. It's like two drunk guys fighting outside of a bar, and even though it couldn't be more unfitting and that it plays really loosely, I can't be mad at this. I'm gonna fuck you up, old man. Just give me a sec. Desmond! Who the fuck is Desmond? Are you Desmond? Oh, wait, you're the Pope. No, I remember that now. I love you. I hope our games are this good forever. What the fuck is this? I could do this all day. You'll want to hear a joke. Boss fights in shooter games. It's an easy joke to make, but it's funny because it's painfully true. You don't need to be a genius to see why either, since the basic gameplay of a typical first or third person shooter boils down to unloading bullets into anything that looks like an enemy. You scale this up to a boss fight and you're just shooting one guy for a long time. This might be why so many shooter games decide to do away with conventional boss fights, because there's not many ways around it. You line it up and hold down that trigger for however long it takes. You can't do much with that. Or maybe we can put people in a helicopter. That could be fun. There's a really intricate strategy behind beating the Lambent Brumac from Gears of War 2. You aim in the rough direction of this funky monster, you can't miss him, he's very large and very ugly. Tape down the shoot button, find something to do for 20 seconds, and congratulations, that's Gears of War 2 done and dusted. Honestly, I can't think of too many final boss setups that are so far removed from how it actually plays. Oh no, it's a giant terrifying mutant who is going to cause our protagonist and his buddies all sorts of problems. Nah, it's dead. It's kind of an allegory for Gears of War as a whole, really. Is it going to be some kind of elaborate scenario that conveys a powerful message about the human condition and our inbuilt sense of vulnerability? Not really. Hold down that trigger and don't think about it too much. Think on your own time.
This is kind of where the idea of a boss fight in a shooter game kind of falls apart. The Lambent Brumac is supposed to be really threatening and a danger to everybody nearby, but how do you reflect this in the gameplay? Maybe you make it so that he hangs around for longer, but it would still be boring rather than imposing. I don't even think you can die here, and you wouldn't have thought that by looking at it.
Anytime I buy DLC for a game, a part of me hopes that I'm getting some extra challenge. As long as you're not buying something that was chopped off of the base game, this is generally correct since the developer wants to give a sense of value for additional content. Maybe it'll take you a while to work through, so the ratio between the money spent and the time spent on the game might indicate that you got value for your purchase. Because we're fucking mathematicians now! DLC that adds a new final boss though, that's just asking to be honest somewhere, because you don't have to hold back with the dickish game design. It's optional content. Complain to someone who gives a shit. So The Binding of Isaac is a moderately difficult game, but nothing that you can't get used to. Hey, there was that guy who set a new speedrun record for Battletoads recently. I'm willing to believe anything now. Even when you're fighting a boss like the Hush, who bombards you with ridiculous bullet hell patterns, which you have to negotiate as some pretty fragile characters, you can learn this, you'll get there. Delirium from the Afterbirth Plus DLC can suck me off though, because a large part of his design, be it the floor you find him on, the forms he takes during the fight, or where he shows up on the screen at any one time, is random! It's kind of a cool idea because he takes the forms of other bosses you fought in the run, but all that means is that every encounter with him is different. There's no pattern to the cascade of bullets that come at you. Nothing you grab onto as, hey, Delirium's about to do this next, lucky I know what to do for this bit. Yeah, it's hard, but not in a fun way, and definitely not in a way where you get the feeling that you're making progress every time you die. Though, if you're gonna call this boss anything, Delirium could not be more of a fitting name. Incoherence, illusions, derangement. We're overqualified here.
Something that I've noticed while researching for this video is that some games don't really know how best to use their villain. They don't know how to play to what makes their bad guys so effective. It's struggling to blur the line between story and gameplay and just throwing people inside tanks.
What was your favourite part of Batman Arkham Knight? Was it all those dropped frames on the PC version? Maybe it was the Riddler trophies. It was the Riddler trophies, wasn't it? That's okay, we all have bad opinions. Just kidding, I actually really like this game. But Arkham Knight does lean a little too heavily on the Batmobile. It's a funky addition that plays into the idea of this game being large and more open world than ever before, but it's hard to appreciate that when you're gracefully sidestepping bullets from this huge supply of drones like some endless boring ballet. And ballet isn't very exciting. The over-reliance on the Batmobile means that it ends up in situations where it shouldn't be. You get something a bit better later, but a tete-a-tete with the Arkham Knight in your own tanks? Actually, fuck off with that. It's missing the point of Batman entirely. But not as much as how this game uses Deathstroke. There's a group of people who don't really like the quick-time event heavy boss fight against Deathstroke from Arkham Origins, despite it functioning like a ridiculous souped-up version of a normal bit of combat. This makes a lot of sense since Deathstroke is this super soldier assassin guy who acts as a brilliant check to Batman's physical strength. But hey, we're tight on time, so let's just throw in another boss fight with another slightly stronger tank, which might as well be a carbon copy of when you fought the Arkham Knight earlier. This is a series that has a bit of history having a tone-deaf final boss that completely misses the point of what makes Batman awesome, but at least with Titan Joker and Arkham Asylum, Rocksteady tried to do something interesting. Sure, it was terrible, but Arkham Knight gets there without even trying. All Master Assassins use tanks, right? It's some company issue equipment, I think. Remember that one mission in Assassin's Creed Brotherhood? Argue with me. Boss fights that are deliberately disappointing are an underappreciated video game trope. When you hype yourself up for a boss fight, you expect something awesome, so if it's a scenario where you're supposed to be disappointed for thematic or story purposes, it can be really effective. The problem is working out if a game has done it intentionally or not. Lucian from Fable 2, for example, is hilariously lackluster, but that's the point. It's all for the comedy. No More Heroes 2's Jasper Bat Jr. is Probably not. Or maybe Suda51 just hates you. The end of Middle-earth Shadow of Mordor, where you work through a few quick-time events, might want to come back to me on that one. You probably don't need reminding that Shadow of Mordor was this vast adventure game with so much effort put into virtually every part of it. Combat feels fluid, you've got this awesome way of handling random enemies that tracks who you fight called the Nemesis system. The soundtrack uses fucking waterphones. What the hell is a waterphone? Point is that you get the sense that everyone working on this game knew what they were doing, so you have to wonder how we got this caliber of ending. All of this powerful creative energy and we end up with a few well-timed button presses. Keep this shit out of my game. So after hours of fighting through lots of aggressive bad guys, you sit through one of the most blatantly rushed endings to any game I've ever played. It's like Monolith ran out of time or money or enthusiasm, and instead of a fight in keeping with the game that came before, you're left with buttons. Like, imagine if the end of Bayonetta was a quick-time event, or if fighting Ganon was just a bunch of inputs. It's such a massive departure from what made the game good. Even worse, this is a fight against Sauron, who spent most of the films doing. So he's basically the biggest opponent this universe can offer. I know the best way to settle this. I'll mash the controller with the palm of my hand. How else would you do it?
This is RabbidLuigi, and the argument in favour of quick-time events is that they help to make a game more immersive as you're pressing buttons in time to the action on screen. But this only works if you're in a situation where immersion is otherwise impossible, like a cutscene. Don't make the final boss of your game an interactive cutscene. I'd sooner eat gravel.
Have you got an idea that you'd like me to turn to a countdown? Let me know in a comment down below, and make sure you check out my Twitter, where I'll be turning the best submissions into a poll where you can then decide the best topic. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.